Because we address some quite crazy things in this video, I thought I'd give this brief disclaimer. Everything that I can find source-wise for everything that we have mentioned in this video, I will put in the description below. But in terms of Cynthia, she has been repeatedly on the correct side of history since the civil rights movement. That's over 60 years. And everything she has said in the past has turned out to be true. So I would at least give her the time of day to hear it out. So enjoy the podcast, but don't take it too seriously, unless you want to. Let's go for it.
Okay.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am here with Cynthia McKinney, former Democratic Congresswoman, turned Green Party presidential and then vice presidential candidate under Jesse Ventura. You attempted to have George Bush, Dick Cheney, and Condoleezza Rice impeached, as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
And you also lobbied for the release of the FBI files on the murder of Tupac Shakur and Martin Luther King Jr., which is like, that's quite a resume before we even get to, like, you're the author of When China Sneezes, from the coronavirus lockdown to the Global Politico-Economic Crisis, which, I mean, so I read the paper that you sent me, and I'm going to guess that that's basically a rough summary of a lot of the things that you cover in the book, but it really laid out for me, like, what an all-encompassing issue this is, and like how huge a story it is. It's like, it's difficult to know where to begin. Do you know what I mean? Because anytime these discussions come up now, I almost like shy away from them if someone isn't like not on the same page as me, but if there's not at least like some common ground, I'm like, I don't even know where to begin, because it's like the way you lay it out is a fantastic overview of just the number of different issues at play here. So, I mean, maybe the best place to start is if we go back like a little bit and sort of talk just briefly about what made you get into politics in the first place.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to say that I am a child of the South of the United States. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, which was sort of like the brains of the civil rights movement. And then you would have Alabama and Mississippi. Those would be the heartbeat of the civil rights movement. And so being a child of the South and growing up in that time, it was veritably impossible to understand what was happening around you if you weren't actually involved in it. And it was all happening around me, and my father was involved in it. So, like, for example, I can't remember the year, but there was a young Black man who had been convicted of raping a white woman. You know, that's that's the old sort of, if you can't get them on that, then, you know, if you can't get them on anything else, you can always get them on that, because there's always a willing witness who will tell a lie. And this young man, though, I believe it was Tommy Lee Hines, I can't remember his name now, but he was mentally ill. I don't know what mentally challenged, I think is what they say now. And so he had the brain of a 6-year-old. He was, you know, sort of childlike. And he got a life sentence for this rape, and not life, execution. And so there was a protest that was organized by Dr. King's organization. This is long after Dr. King, though. And as a part of that my dad went there. And so as a part of my sort of civil rights education, he took me. But I had been involved in protests and sit-ins before, when we were trying to get the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. And that required people sitting in public places. And I remember I sat in, and at that time it was the Sheraton Biltmore Hotel. And we went there and we were singing freedom songs. I don't know. I must have been 8 or 9 years old or something, you know. And I went into this hotel and it was like, there was so much gold. I was saying, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this before. Oh, of course it was brass, but I thought it was gold. I didn't know any different. And we had our box lunches and we were sitting there and, you know, this is a very expensive hotel. And the last thing the patrons want is to have a bunch of Black people sitting there and eating chicken buses, you know, but that's what we were doing. And so I kind of grew up in that spirit. But you also have to understand what the spirit was like in the United States at that time. Because remember, the US was involved in the Vietnam War, and there were people who really were against this war. And they were basically middle class to wealthy white kids who were university students. And they were against the war. The Blacks were against the war. The Mexican Americans were against the war. And so in order to effect the kind of public policy change, during this time, you saw really what Jesse Jackson said in his campaign. I think it was the 88 campaign, the Rainbow Coalition. Mm-hmm. The United States was really a rainbow. And there were flowers popping up everywhere. And those flowers, the flower children, were the young people who were able to work together, come together. So you would have a group like the Young Lords, the Brown Berets, come together with the Black Panthers, come together with the American Indian movement. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. It was like the United States was a laboratory for participatory democracy. And there were egregious wrongs that everyone recognized as wrongs. Mm-hmm. And then this younger generation came in and they wanted to change things. Now, I was just below, a little bit younger than that generation, those flower children and flower power and all of that, Woodstock generation. I was just a little bit younger than them, but I had the spirit, and the spirit was not just within me, it was within my entire family. So I was steeped in this kind of social change, struggle for social change, readiness to protest. And also because of my educational background, I understood that I would have to search, how can I say, far and wide and deep in order to understand what my environment was. And so I could not accept what I saw on the news, although the news back then was a whole lot better and a whole lot less fake than it is today. But I couldn't trust that. I couldn't trust government documents. And I was a voracious reader of US government documents. I became basically enthralled with the details of the COINTELPRO program. And this was when the Constitution was literally just thrown away. And if you were targeted by the US government, it could include murder. And so the US government became a party to the murder of US citizens who basically only wanted to be considered US citizens. And so I read, if the COINTELPRO papers are maybe 5 or so 1,000 pages, I've read about 1,000 pages of them or more. And so I understand what my government is capable of doing. As a result of that, then I question everything. And I don't believe that there is anything beyond what people who are wielding power in the United States on behalf of me as a taxpayer and my family and my community and my country there's nothing that they won't do. And I've seen it in the reports, for example, the use of biological agents against Korea in the Korean War, the biological agents that were used against Castro's Cuba, the acknowledged assassination attempts against Castro himself, and also something I explore briefly in When China Sneezes is the fabrication or the creation of a virus that was concocted for the purpose of killing Patrice Lumumba, who was being problematic in Congo. So the United States government has not hesitated to kill abroad, to use, we know they've used atomic weapons. I think it was a British report that actually confirmed the use of biological weapons in Korea. And we know that the United States transferred chemical weapons to the likes of Saddam Hussein to be used during the Iraq-Iran war, where the United States was pumping both sides to kill both sides. And so the ABC weaponry that is a part of the US arsenal has been used by the US. So now, why would I dare to think that they wouldn't use this same arsenal against people inside the United States? And so that's what made me start thinking, because I saw I was a fanatic, a fan, I should say, of the Black Panther Party. And I was intensely interested in COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, as it was orchestrated by the FBI and the CIA and local police departments in conjunction with local police departments, and how members of the Black Panther Party were labeled first as violent, and they weren't violent. It didn't matter. One study by, I think his name is Bruce Cunningham. He's actually the only academician who has really studied COINTELPRO. And he looked at the patterns that the FBI used in order to destroy these civil rights organizations. And the most prevalent pattern was infiltration. Why? Because it worked. And so they used it over and over and over again. And we see infiltration today. So for example, in Canada, when there's a protest, the protesters looked down and they saw that all of those agents provocateurs were wearing the same shoes, and they were members of the police department. They had their protest movement had been infiltrated, as most cases of successful organizations, they are going to be infiltrated. We have the other example, of the stay behind NATO CIA experience with the Red Brigades. This is Operation Gladio. And what happened in Operation Gladio is that the United States was particularly interested in denying full sovereignty to the voters of Italy. Had the voters been able to elect their candidate of choice, they probably would have selected someone from the far left. And so in order to prevent, and not just Italy, this was all over Europe. This happened all over Europe.
Holy shit! Sorry, I'm just looking at this for people who are interested. So I know Wikipedia is not exactly the most trustworthy source in the world, but
no, it's not at all.
When you go to
in fact, I give my students demerits if they use Wikipedia.
But if you just on the Wikipedia page, just as like an example, they have operations in NATO countries. They have Italy, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Turkey, Austria, Finland, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland, all listed as part of this. Whoa.
That's right.
I had never even heard of this.
Yeah, Operation Gladio. Now, the way we found out about Operation Gladio was from, well, of course, you know, what happened in Italy with Aldo Moro being kidnapped and the whole thing. And it was said that the Red Brigades had done it. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that the Red Brigades as an organization had been completely infiltrated. And so the Red Brigades existed as a name, but everybody that was operating inside Red Brigades was CIA. They had completely taken it over. And so so these are lessons to let us know if they will do it there, they will do it there. And if they will do it there, they'll do it there. And if they do it there, they will do it here. Yeah. That's the lesson that I learned as a part of understanding all of this. And so with Operation Gladio, now in terms of getting the details for Operation Gladio, BBC Timeline has done a wonderful documentary where they go and they actually interview people who were on the CIA payroll, who planted bombs, and, you know, they did all of the things that it's called a strategy of tension. So they did all of these things in Europe, and they believed at the time that they were doing a noble thing for the right reasons. Of course, now, of course, we know that it was not noble at all. It was ignoble, and it was for all the wrong reasons, which is another reason why I just can't believe when the United States government tells, oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We lost the camera.
Can we pause it for a minute?
Yeah, don't worry. I'll edit this out. Don't worry at all.
Okay, great.
Like, just while you fix that, actually, I'll talk, because there was a couple of things that I wanted to bring up that you sort of made me think of here. So, first of all, like, you haven't even mentioned MK Ultra and the horrors that you know that were performed upon. Thousands and thousands of people just pulled off the street. There's the very famous Operation Northwoods, where the government were sort of happy to arm human friendlies and blow up, I think, hospitals, and they were planning to stage a fake invasion. And then most recently, I believe it's 14 out of the 16 people involved in the attempted or the planned assassination / kidnap of Governor Whitmer. 14 out of 16 of them were U.S. government agents. It's like, how is that? Like, you know, I can't believe that when I heard that, I was like, what do you mean 14 out of 16? It's like, that's just an intelligence agency plot. Like, that's not, they haven't infiltrated it. They're running it. Like, which is completely,
it's
completely
not an infiltration.
bonkers.
I'm trying to get this thing right here. So just
that's all right.
bear with me for just a minute. But there is nothing that you see. Let me tell you what my lesson today in my introduction to political science was. I teach key concepts by key concepts, because the textbooks, the political science textbooks, I'm not a political scientist. I study international relations. That's my thing. But the textbooks are just so full of whatever that I cannot, in good conscience, teach from a Western-oriented textbook that is full of propaganda and untruths, half-truths. And so I think it's more important to focus on the concepts. So basically what we looked at today were the various, last class was the various political systems. And then the class today, I talked about what happens in the real world with indirect democracy. So we've got democracy, which is supposedly the best political system that ever existed, right? But I'm in a part of the world where the people actually they've had dictatorship, they've had junta, they've had monarchy, they've had all of the different kinds of political systems that, at least in the US, we haven't had. And so I had students tell me, so I had to think about this for a while when the student told me, well, we had a dictator and we kind of like that dictator. So then I have to wrap my head around, okay, well now dictatorship is good for some people. And just because we say that, they tell us that democracy is the best political system in the world doesn't mean that it is. It's best, but who is it best for?
Yeah.
And so then I make the differentiation between direct democracy and indirect democracy. Okay, what's direct democracy? Direct democracy is what Libya had before they got bombed to the Stone Ages with the Jamahiriya. I went to Libya several times and I experienced the Jamahiriya, where 7 million people, which is their entire population, has the right to vote on a public policy issue. And when I was there, they were trying to decide, are we going to subsidize gasoline or are we going to subsidize education and bring more Africans into Libya so that we can educate them and they can help build Africa, because that was the sort of intention of the Jamahiriya at that time. And so I saw direct democracy. But then on the other hand, we always get a chance to see the effect of indirect democracy, which is sometimes called representative democracy. But the fact of the matter is that representative democracy isn't very representative at all. And if you're a small country and you are trying to exercise your sovereignty, what's going to happen is that this external power is going to come in with an indirect democracy, which means that you've got a legislature. So, for example, in Bangladesh, they've got 168 million people. They have about 400 people within the government structure that set public policy. So if the United States wants to control Bangladesh, they only have to buy 400 people.
200.
Whereas if you had a direct democracy, they'd have to buy 168 million people. And the sort of culmination of this way of thinking just happened, maybe a month ago in Pakistan, where you have 200 million people in Pakistan. Imran Khan is the candidate that represents sovereignty and independence and freedom for the people of Pakistan. And whatever that number is of the legislature votes him out of office in a vote of no confidence, and he's gone. And then the U.S. puppet comes in. So this is it is an exact example of what I've been warning my students about. Your ability to exercise your freedom, which you had your liberation war and your freedom fighters died for, the sovereignty is limited to the extent that your whole country can be purchased if you purchase 400 people. So this is the kind of thing that we have to look at the reality of what is happening in the world, and then understand that whatever is written in a textbook and half of what is broadcast in the media, the corporate-owned media and foundation-funded media, is not true. That realization is what led me to actually go to China in December of 2019.
Oh, wow. Very prescient. That's like, I mean, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get her on the show, but I've been reading Shari Markson's What Really Happened in Wuhan. I don't know if you've looked at it or heard of it.
No, I haven't.
It's stunning. Like it's amazing. It's like, I can't recommend it highly enough to anyone that actually cares about how COVID happened and how the whole thing kicked off, because she spoke to, it's got to be hundreds of different scientists, many of whom were working on this early on, people who were covering it through the entire pandemic, like updating their understanding, trying to figure out, like, was this a man-made virus? Was this something that had been taken from, like, I mean, the part I'm at in the minute in the book is talking about how it's theorized, at least, that it was a virus found about 8 years ago in like a different part of China in this mine. And then it had been, kept in the Wuhan lab by, the woman's name escapes me. She's called the Bat Lady. She was experimenting on coronaviruses, and then it goes into the furin cleavage site, and its similarities to, different bits of virus that were patented by Moderna. And I mean, also for YouTube, no one should ever take anything I'm saying here seriously, for a disclaimer. So
that's not a very good disclaimer.
Well, it means I can stay on YouTube and not get banned. So, although we'll see. I already got a community strike that can never be taken away for talking about ivermectin one time. So that was good.
Oh,
so I was banned
I
from
tell
posting.
you. Well, you're subject to get a strike just for having me on, period. Just to warn you.
I searched you in YouTube to look at like some more recent interviews of yourself, and all that comes up is things from like 9, 10, 12 years ago, like when you were on Abby Martin's show, for example, but there's like no recent interviews that come up in the search, which I thought was hilarious. It's like you became you became persona non grata, apparently.
That's right. In fact, I did an interview the other day, and the young man told me that as soon as he posted that interview, he got a strike.
Oh wow! Okay, well, we'll see what happens. But to get us back on track here, so I really like the way you've laid out everything here, where we've talked about times in which governments have been happy to commit atrocities against both foreign populations and their own, because I think that's really crucial to start to understand where you're coming from in When China Sneezes, and a lot of the stuff that you've written in the draft report that you'd sent me. It's as I said, it's difficult to know where to begin. So why did you why did you decide to go to China? Was it just like curiosity in 2019? Did you have like a tip or something? And then when did you start to like read the book, or not even read the book? When did you start to write the book?
Okay, so actually what happened was, if you look at my bio, you'll see that when Obama was bombing Libya, I was there. When the bombs started to drop in Syria, I was there. When Lebanon was trying to defend itself from an Israeli, the fear of an Israeli incursion, this is after the 86 war, I was there. So you could say that I kind of do this global witnessing thing. And if I'm told one thing, then I want to go there and see for myself. And we were told that China was genociding, committing acts of genocide against the Uyghur people. And so I said, okay, let me see if I want to go. Let me see if I can get some other people to go with me. It turned out that 18 people from the United States and 2 people from the UK joined me on a trip to go to China. We started in Beijing, we went to Xi'an, we went to Dunhuang, and then we ended up in Xinjiang. So basically what we wanted to do, Urumqi. And Urumqi is like the autonomous province that is controlled and run by the Uyghur population. So, and along the way in each of those cities, we immersed ourselves in the Muslim community that was there. So, when we were in Beijing, we were with Muslims. When we were in Xi'an, we were with Muslims. When we were in Dunhuang, we stayed in a Muslim-owned hotel. We just were trying to understand, because the idea is that we were going to produce our findings sort of like a fact-finding mission.
Mhm.
And we were going to write our findings, and that was going to be a book. But while we were there, something else happened. Something happened in Wuhan. And we didn't have a clue. We did not have a clue. We're looking at the news every day, the English language news. And we had a few Chinese speakers with us who were able to translate when needed. Plus, I had my little trusty electronic translator. But I mean, it's not like we were oblivious to the news. It just wasn't on the news at that time. And then when we came back, on the way back, we discovered when we are like, when we get back home, maybe a week later, China shuts down. And then I knew that the story about the treatment of the Uyghurs was going to have to wait. And so then I quickly sort of regrouped, and I had met people in China. So I knew that I needed to include them and their experience in the book. And then when the lockdown spread to Italy, then I said, oh, okay, I got to get me an Italian person to talk about this experience as well. So I have Gladio Peretti, who helped sort of provide an understanding from the European point of view. Then, of course, it's impossible to discuss something of this magnitude and not discuss so you had everybody talking about the medical situation as it was going on, but I don't think anybody really was talking about the politics of the disease, the economics of the disease, the
very few
maybe
people.
New World Order mission. That
Can I just pause you there before we go any further than this? Because I know for a fact, right, that there are a lot of people who listen to this show who have been on board with everything that we've said, or a lot of what we've said so far. You know, they're aware of like intelligent, like rogue parts of intelligence agencies throughout history, COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, like the atrocities that have been committed by the US government and by other governments around the world. They're familiar with the Uyghur genocide. Like, I mean, I've had people on this show talking about it. I've had people talking about like the complicity of the UN in covering up things for China. I had Emma Riley on the show talking specifically about how like police turned up to your house because there were like UN police had turned up to your house like during the one hearing about this that she was ever able to like get a discussion about. And people are all on board for everything that you've said, right? And as soon as you go to there was an agenda here in terms of like how the world reacted to COVID and to the pandemic, it was like there's an extent to which you can say, okay, people panicked. And I think a lot of people did. I definitely was like, what the fuck? I have no idea what was going on, especially early on. But there was definitely people with an agenda who, as soon as this like set in, they were happy to try and take advantage of it. And I would like people to just, before we go into this, to hear you out and think like carefully about like saying that everything you've said up to this point in this interview has been accurate. And now, oh, well, that's crazy. Like, I'd like them to just, like, consider what you're saying. So, yeah, please continue.
Okay, so, it's not the first time that a disease has had a political agenda. And it just so happens that, at least in the United States, the whole situation with HIV came along with a political agenda. And so it might be uncomfortable to explore these ideas, but I think it's also necessary if one wants to remain grounded in reality and stick with the facts and then be willing to go wherever the facts will take you. So I came back and started putting together the list of people who were already, and people were sending, I put something on, I must have posted something, I don't remember, that I just came back from China. I was lucky to get out of China, and let's see if the CDC is going to contact me because, I was there. Mm-hmm. Of course, I didn't get any contact by anybody. And, but of course, these people in Atlanta, Georgia, where the CDC is located, they know me very well. So they wouldn't contact me if there was something wrong. If everything were all right, then maybe they might reach out. But if something's wrong, they are definitely not going to touch me because I'm going to go all the way to the very end. Mm. Well, anyway, so I found the contributors to the book who were willing to explore and just report what the results of their explorations, and were willing to think and go where it's sort of uncomfortable to go. And that includes Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb is one of the great investigative journalists of today. And she had written about DARPA and DARPA's research regarding coronaviruses. And then you have Jeff J. Brown, who wrote Chapter 1. And he has spent the last 20 years investigating biological weapons. So these are not newbies. These are not people who sort of come up with a jackleg idea and then try to write, 25 or 30 pages and get it published in a book. No, these are people whose life has been devoted to some form of truth about what is actually happening in the world. And I was very pleased to get economists like, I should have the list in front of me, but I got Michael Hudson, internationally renowned. I've got William Robinson, who focuses mainly on Latin America, but the piece that he wrote was excellent about global capitalism. We've got Jack Rasmus and Peter Koenig. We have, as I said before, Claudio Peretti talking about Italy, and not just Italy, but sort of what could happen as a result of this. We've got Helen Bajnitsky, who writes for Russia Today. She's a U.S. citizen, and she's a journalist, investigative journalist, and she just couldn't stop writing. It was just coming out, it was pouring out of her soul. What this really was. Her chapter is probably twice the size of mine, and mine was twice the size of everybody else's. My chapter was on genocide. Is it possible to create the Project for a New American Century wrote on page 60 of Rebuilding America's Defenses that a genotypically specific bioweapon could become a politically useful tool. They wrote it. I expect that they would carry it out. It was their intention. And so, of course, that's exactly what I would go and look and see. Is this, people talk about the coronavirus, and people talk about SARS coronavirus 2, but very few people are willing to talk about the spike protein. Because yes, coronaviruses are naturally occurring. But what about that spike protein? That spike protein has a special affinity for people who have a lot of ACE2 in their body, but everybody doesn't have a lot of ACE2. For people who have a lot of furin in their body, but everybody doesn't have furin. TMPRSS2, but everybody doesn't have it. So who doesn't have it? There have been studies that tell us who doesn't have it. But you can tell who has it because they're dying or they're getting long COVID or whatever, they're having adverse health effects, not from the coronavirus, which everybody is willing to talk about. The poor health effects come from the spike protein. Now, it just so happens that Moderna and Pfizer's shots, which I refuse to call vaccines, turn the human body into a manufacturing plant of that very same spike protein. It's toxic. So no wonder people are getting sick. And I just had a student to test positive. All of my students took the shot. And this is the second student now who, aside from the fact that they're shedding on me, they're coming down with COVID again. And this is exactly what Geert Vanden Bossche predicted. So if you go back and you look at Geert Vanden Bossche,
yes, he was on my show recently, actually.
Huh?
I had him on the show recently, actually. I'll put the link in the description for people.
So your audience is fully aware of what is expected to happen and what is happening. So this little draft summary report that I did, it's just, sort of me trying to figure out, let's get a status of what's going on here and put it all in one place, sort of like a literature review and academic work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's staggering. And if you go through it, which let me open this document up. And, this thing, I agree with David Martin, who is a patent attorney, and he went and he followed the patents. And Jeff J. Brown, who wrote chapter 1 in When China Sneezes, he mentioned the patents. He also mentioned the fact that the United States operates over 200 biolabs around the world. Now, why are my tax dollars going into a biolab? And nobody in their wildest dreams expected that there would be 46 biolabs operated by the Pentagon in Ukraine alone.
I will say, actually, just for posterity, that according to Snopes and Reuters and Yahoo, who I checked this out yesterday, they said it wasn't US run. It was just, they were just receiving levels of support and funding across laboratories and health facilities. So that is the official narrative there, for posterity.
Yeah, okay. So I do a useful, well, I think it's useful to me. Mm-hmm. Let me go to the end of this paper here. I'm trying not to also knock my camera down. Okay, so I have a section in here called Media Lies and Fake News. And the article is written by J. Bart Klassen, who is a medical doctor. And in January of 2021, he published in the Journal of Journal of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases an article entitled COVID-19 RNA-based vaccines and the risk of prion disease. So now he wrote that in 2021, January. The response from the American Council on Science and Health: no, COVID mRNA vaccine won't cause Alzheimer's or prion disease. That was February 2021. PolitiFact: the coronavirus vaccine doesn't cause Alzheimer's or ALS. February 2021. Health Desk: why are mRNA vaccines an unlikely cause of any neurodegenerative diseases? April 2021. Stephanie Seneff and Greg Nye were able to get something published in between this. Worse than the disease? Reviewing some possible unintended consequences of the mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. This was published in the International Journal of Vaccine Theory, Practice, and Research. That was May 2021. Reuters fact check. Oh, this is what I write. Reuters fact check needs to be fact checked because Reuters fact check says no evidence that Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine causes Alzheimer's disease. That's May 2021. So you have this onslaught of articles saying, no, here's Britannica saying, oh, no, it's not true. These are myths. University of Michigan Medicine saying, fact check, no evidence. Agence France-Presse says study falsely claims COVID vaccines may cause neurodegenerative diseases.
Such
that
pointed,
was
such
May
pointed language,
2021.
Though. Like there's because right, a lot of these things are you don't necessarily have I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that something created by some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world may have side effects that they did not intend. This would not be the first time that had ever happened. And some of the papers that you're presenting were people who are educated in the field saying, hey, this might be an issue. Like, might be an issue. Like, it could be an issue.
That's correct.
And then Reuters and all the fact checkers are coming out and just being like, don't be ridiculous. There's absolutely no chance of this happening. It's like, hang on. Like, says who?
That's right. Okay.
You know?
But now let me finish.
Yeah, sorry.
1 year later, Priyan Bose writes, prion-like domains in SARS-CoV-2, RBD, and ACE2 play important functional roles in viral adhesion and entry. Mm-hmm. That's January 2022. So now that's published in the newsmedical.net. So now we're getting some acceptance. Okay, well, maybe there is something with this prion disease, okay? She said prion-like, so I guess that got her through. Then you have the most recent Claire Moret, Cheney, and Luc Montagnier, and Jean-Claude Perez, toward the emergence of a new form of the neurodegenerative Creutzfeldt-Jakob CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. 26 cases of CJD declared a few days after COVID-19 vaccine. That's May 2022. So I guess that might have been the last study that Luc Montagnier was involved in before he died. But so now, okay, prion disease. Yeah, what's prion disease? Well, it's this CJD, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's. Everything that was poo-pooed throughout 2021 is now accepted in 2022. And you could do this with many different assertions that have been made up based on research about what we're experiencing. And so it's really hard to know the truth if you're bombarded with the fake news of the fact checkers. So I don't care what Snopes says. Snopes is a husband and a wife team that probably graduated from high school, and that's about it. But they were able to say yes when Facebook offered them some money. So I don't put any stock in what Snopes has to say. I do check them, though.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I have to bring it up to just because it's important to acknowledge what the mainstream is saying if we're going to discuss that we think possibly they're lying.
And that's why I check them. Facebook will put a Snopes thing up there and I'm going to click on it and to see what they're saying, because I want to know what they're saying. And then if what they say has some legitimacy, then maybe I'll reconsider what I posted. But generally speaking, it doesn't have very much legitimacy because I'm talking I talk to a doctor every morning.
Hmm.
Every morning I talk to a doctor. He exchanges with me the latest research. I exchange with him the politics. And so, because what doctors have not been schooled in is the politics of medicine. So now they're getting, particularly the doctors whom I name in this paper, they're getting a lesson the hard way, and their clients, their patients, are getting a lesson the hard way in the politics of medicine.
Yeah. Before we move on, I want to pull something up for people who are watching as well. So one of the concerns that people had about the vaccine was myocarditis, and that was again sort of suggested to be rubbish. And now on the gov.uk website, there is a section dedicated to myocarditis and pericarditis after the COVID-19 vaccination. And again, like a lot of the time, this isn't like loads of people. It's not like, thankfully, it's not like massive amounts of people, but like it does exist. And like to suggest that anyone saying that this could happen was wrong and didn't deserve a platform. And it's an absolute lesson in why we shouldn't just accept institutional narratives and just whatever the corporate press are saying. Because, you know, as I said, like, thankfully this wasn't a situation, like, obviously I feel awful for anyone who had like side effects from this. But thankfully it wasn't a situation where it was loads of people. You know, we could have been in a way worse position because we were just happy to go along with whatever the corporate press has told us.
Well, I think we are in a worse position. Let's just talk about, let's go back to that document. Let me find it again.
Which I will link for everyone, actually, in the description below, if that's all right.
Yeah, let me go back to this document and go up to some of the observed health effects and where they come from. So, for example, the all-cause excess mortality. So what happened is that we're experiencing more death now than we did a year ago, and more death now than 2 years ago. So there's the expected mortality, and when you reach that level and exceed that level, then it's excess mortality. And that's where we are for young people in the US. And the information comes from two different places. So you have this CEO from an insurance company.
Yeah, I'm just pulling the document up for you now. It was from Igor Chudov, I believe his name is.
Okay, Igor Chudov actually was responding to Robert Malone, who is a medical doctor who created the mRNA technology. So Robert Malone wrote about excess mortality because he read about the remarks of this insurance CEO who said that they're paying out so much money. And the reason they're paying it out is because people are dying. And so then Robert Malone chimed in, and Igor Chudov is saying, well, is Robert Malone right or wrong? And Chudov then confirmed that Malone was right, that there is excess death. And they used the statistics. It is reported that a similar pattern holds for England as well. So these statistics are from the official government statistics.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the chart here for people to see all-cause excess mortality in the United States from 25 to 44 years. And it goes from 2020 through to December of last year. So it goes up a little bit above what I believe is the average or expected around March, which suggests that some people were dying from COVID, and then around July it really starts to spike, and then it comes back down a little bit towards the end of last year. It's this weird spike that's like, what on earth is going on there? And
well, that's when people get the shot, and then they anywhere from a week to 3 months later, you see the sort of the adverse or the effects, if they're going to have an effect. That's when you see it. So there's a lag to the actual taking of the shot to the adverse effects. But some adverse effects can occur with as quickly as a few days, 48 hours to a week. Then, of course, you have, let me show you here, and this is where you look at the VAERS vaccine adverse effects reporting system. You look at that's maintained by the CDC. And so you've got deaths. And of course, this also is part of that insurance executive talking about how they are paying out so much money in insurance payments and disability. So the Department of Labor from the United States, the Department of Labor statistics came out, and someone got the idea, well, let's look at who's applying for disability insurance. And based on that data, that's how you arrive at the fact that disabilities have increased. So deaths have increased and disabilities have increased. And there's a chart there
and then
on that as well.
The other thing that I really, that kind of freaked me out in your paper was, and I didn't realize the number was this high, it was the people looking at athletes. So it's, according to one study, they think 500% more soccer players in the EU are dropping dead from heart attacks than 1 year ago. It's like, what? Like 15 players dropped out of the Miami Open due to problems. And then, it's something like they think one team of researchers put the figure 890 cardiac arrests among athletes, including 579 deaths. Wow. It's right. It's so freaky that we don't because do you know what? It just for absolute reason, argument's sake, it's just say it's absolutely nothing to do with that. Then what the fuck is going on? Has nobody curious? Is nobody curious? What this is? That's the thing that weirds me out. It's is there a switch in our brain that just goes, I don't want to know. Nope.
I don't know how you can look at this picture of this soccer player and he's lying down inside the goal. Yeah. He's fallen out, and you see that over and over and over again, and you not say something's wrong. Yeah, something's wrong.
Yeah, I mean Matt Letizia.
And then here's the one on fetal deaths. It's probably the most devastating because this comes directly from the Pfizer documents that a group of medical professionals had to sue the FDA to get. And what Pfizer showed in their own documents was that between 82 and 97% of pregnant women who took the shot had spontaneous abortions.
That's wild.
But have they said that pregnant women should not take these shots? No, they're trying to give them to 6-year-olds, and they will.
It's really weird, man.
So this is, then I have, grounded pilots, heart inflammation. So there's the data here are from reliable sources. The compilations are from competent individuals. And so now what is the public response? What should the public response be? If we had elected officials who really cared about us, this would have been stopped a long time ago, but it hasn't been because there's a lot of money in big pharma. And don't mind getting a piece of that. I also have to agree with David Martin, who says he places all of this at President trauma. It is trauma. President
trauma.
Trump's.
That's so real.
Trauma. Trump and Obama. Yeah. But at Trump's doorstep with Operation Warp Speed. Because if the FDA had maintained that these injections, the contents have to be disclosed, the human clinical trials have to be completed, then we wouldn't be here at this point. If someone had, instead of playing it safe and talking about coronavirus, because then that allows you to talk about China, but if they had talked about the spike protein, then you have no choice but to talk about the laboratory work that was done to create the spike protein. And Trump knew this because on my chapter, what I start the chapter off with is the letter that Trump sent to his medical staff at the White House demanding to know the origin of SARS coronavirus 2 because of the alleged 4 HIV inserts that were found in the spike protein. Trump knew. I believe that's why Trump came out and said, it's a hoax or whatever he, said at the beginning. But the bottom line is that there was no political will to do anything other than what a few interested individuals wanted done. That is not the function of government. Should not be anyway. And it certainly isn't the function of democratic government. I think that people should start having an open mind about various political systems. And I think that, for example, I was trying to show my students the yellow vest because, of course, I went to France to participate in the protest with the yellow vest. And one of the demands of the yellow vest is that France institute a direct democracy system. That's what they're asking for. And do you know that YouTube is censoring a video that explains, it's an interview of yellow vest activists. That's all. It's yellow vest. And the video is censored. So I couldn't even show my students the video. I said, well, it's all right. I will download the video and then I will upload it to my website and they will get a chance to see French activists demanding direct democracy. But the last thing the powers that be want is an informed electorate that are also policymakers. And it is possible for each and every one of us to be a policymaker. If it's good enough for Switzerland to do it, it should have been good enough for Libya to do it. But Libya couldn't do it because they were African, and no African can demonstrate self-governance and unlimited sovereignty, which is what we're talking about here. And so now what you're seeing is, for example, Japan, the United States has 18 military bases on the Japanese islands. Why? Is Japan a sovereign state? No, it can't be sovereign if it's got 18 foreign military bases on its territory. It can't be sovereign. And what we see is that the sovereignty, which actually is the space within which states are allowed to operate, is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah.
And when a state says, okay, I am not going to accept diktat from the West, then that state becomes a pariah state.
Yep, it's kind of disturbing. And I there's a lot. So we've covered a lot here. So unfortunately, I'm probably gonna have to go here. But Yeah, I think that's a nice place to leave it. Is just like countries are increasingly losing their sovereignty to overarching international structures in which that we have no say, and it's important to be aware that that is happening, or we will probably fall victim to it. But if this is to be my last episode, thanks to all the stuff we've covered, thanks everyone for listening. It's been a ride. But I will put the links for everything that we talked about in the description below. I did want to bring up just very briefly what you were saying about that figure. So I went to the study that it said. So it was that there was 274 cases with pregnancy involved. 23 Pfizer had reported a spontaneous abortion. Premature birth was 2, outcome pending was 5, I'm not sure, and then 238 of them had no data reported, which is like...
No data, because clearly what Pfizer did was the numbers were so bad, they said, well, we just won't collect any more data.
Well, I mean, that would be the implication, but I wouldn't want to, imply that Pfizer would ever lie.
You can't say it, but I will. Otherwise, we'd have the data.
I mean, you'd like to think that if it was positive, they would attempt to follow it up. But I mean, I think they probably just didn't care at that point, because the governments had all signed. They'd signed off. It's just like, whatever you got, here's the money, just give it to us. Like, and that's probably half the problem, was that there was no requirement for them to produce the best product possible in the most transparent way, because they'd literally already got the money and signed the contracts.
Yeah. That's right.
So, yeah, unfortunately. But Cynthia, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great. Bye.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. If you want to leave us a comment, that would be awesome. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on Apple, please leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.